Good evening, everyone. This is Wayne over at the Alchemical Tech Revolution YouTube channel. Tonight, we're doing an unintended crossover event. Normally, Sunday nights, I do Sola Scriptura with the great Baldini. Baldini is just getting back from traveling this week, and he needs a night to rest and get some important bald guy stuff done. So, we're just going to let him do his thing. I was intending to actually do this as a live stream, but for some reason, I don't have my OBS studio linked up into my YouTube channel to live stream the right way in the settings, so I'm going to have to incur some help for this from either Jason or Baldy and get that kind of working properly. So we're just going to do a little recorded show here for you guys. And tonight we're going to go through Matthew chapter 24. And oftentimes this is referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. And, when we look at this stuff, we could see, the times that we're living in right now coming to pass before our eyes. So we're just going to get right into that here tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and read through, and I'll be pausing at some point and just giving, a couple side notes on things as we go. And this isn't going to be like a full-length episode, being as how I really couldn't get the live streaming service to work properly through my OBS studio. But we'll go ahead and we'll do this anyway, and it should be good and informational for people and give them just a little, lesson into the Word for tonight, so that we could have something good here to discuss and think upon. So here we go. It's chapter 24, starting at verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall be not left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? Okay, we're going to pause right here. This is actually from the King James Version of the Bible. I do look at several different versions of the Bible. I do like the King James. I don't know, there's something about just the feel of the language in the King James that kind of resonates with me. So that's why I usually read from the King James Version. Maybe that's just because that's the version that, I generally was familiar with. But so here we have Jesus is talking to his disciples privately. Okay, so this is not, he's not speaking before a big crowd of people or anything. And they're asking him some questions about the end of the age, like how are we going to know what's going to happen and what these things are going to be? Tell us about this. So this is where Jesus begins to tell them things. And just prior to that, we see how he was talking about how the temple shall not have one stone left upon another. That this came to fruition. I believe it was when I think it was the Romans uh, came through and they tore the temple apart. They tore down every stone, and the reason they did this is because of all the gold in the temple, or at least this is what a lot of the theologians and historians claim that it is. When they came in and they sacked the temple, they actually, when they burned it, there was so much gold and stuff in the temple that the gold like melted and went in the cracks of the stones. So a lot of the soldiers, when they tore the temple down, they took every stone out to try and find gold in there. So this is how this came actually to fruition, that this temple was destroyed, like, and utterly decimated, and not one stone was left unturned, just as Jesus had predicted here. So this is where we're at, and they came up to him when he was sitting in the Mount of Olives, and they had just a little private conversation there. And this is what they asked him, and Matthew wrote this down in this gospel here, in this gospel story. So let's continue on, and this will be at chapter 4. And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. Now, this is probably one of the most important verses in the Bible. Okay, take heed that no man deceive you, because we are living in the age of deceit, folks. folks, and there's no doubt about that in my mind. As I doubt there's no doubt in any of your minds about that either. Uh, these are very difficult times to live in. It's hard to know what's true, what's false, what's real, what's not. The way, especially, we're bombarded with media all the time. We get so many false narratives interspersed with everything, with some true information, and it makes it very hard to actually go through the process of discernment here. So this is important. Jesus is telling his disciples, take heed that no man deceive you. And we'll continue on now in verse 5. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. And divers places just means various places, numerous places. That's what that means, the word divers in there. A lot of people, get a little confused by, or they translate it as diverse, which I guess kind of works in that situation. But, the intention is there anyway. But what do we see going on today? There's wars, there's rumors of wars, there's pestilence, there's rumors of pestilence, there's famines, earthquakes. We've seen earthquakes, all sorts of natural disasters, things of this nature. These are all signs that the Lord said had to be, but the end is not yet. So this is telling us, there is still time to turn this whole situation around, or to be prepared actually for the changeover, the switchover of the ages, or the change, you know, into the things to come, or the return of the Lord. All of these different ideas. So he's telling us we have time to prepare yet, and we have time to understand what's going on, to really take a look at it. He said, these are the things to look for. When you start to see these things, then know that the time is soon. So that's where we're at right now. Anyway, let's continue on. So this will be picking up at verse 8. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And that was, through verse 10 right there. Let's look at this again and read through it. All these are the beginning of sorrows. So that's kind of where we're sitting at in the timeline right now, folks. This is the beginning of sorrows, okay? We could see many of these things going on, especially in different parts of the world. Then shall they deliver you to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. There's a whole lot of hatred for Christianity going on right now, folks. Like you see it. It's just blatant in the society, even in Western culture, that was, allegedly built upon Christian ideals and things of this nature. So you could see there's this just strange, vehement reaction to the Christian faith right now. So you could see these things coming to fruition, and in many parts of the world, like especially China and some of the countries over in Asia. Their Christians are persecuted and actually killed there, for professing their faith. So I mean, this is a serious thing. So this is going on today. That you should be hated for my name's sake. He says that there, and that's the thing. I mean, even a lot of these Christians. And see, here's the thing. Here's a lot of the problem why Christianity gets such a bad rap, because a lot of Christians get caught up in the whole legalism aspect of everything here. So they get caught up in that, do this, don't do that bit. The whole, if you violate the commandments, oh, you're a vile sinner and this and that. And they try their best to keep the law perfectly. But Jesus actually came to fulfill the law. And I mean, he's actually said this. So he came on the scene to fulfill all of this so that we didn't have to worry about this whole legalism system that went along with the earlier faith. So, like, this is the thing where if we follow him, we'll want to do the right things, and it won't be a burden to actually follow these laws or these legalistic ideas. But people get caught up in the dogma of legalism, especially Christians, like especially new Christians and stuff like that. They get so caught up in it, and they forget we're all sinners. Like, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and that's why Jesus came to fulfill the law, so that we could be worthy for reunification with God the Father, so that we didn't have to necessarily keep all of these legalistic dogmas that were associated with the Old Testament in particular. And you could see how many of these things they kind of affect people's mindset on things. It's one thing to want to do good and be good, but it's another thing to actually do so at the expense of frightening people away from faith, thinking they can never be good enough. Because, see, that's the whole purpose of why God put these laws and stuff in place. It's to show us that we have all sinned. We cannot be perfect. We're imperfect. Okay, that was the whole point, to show us we're imperfect. We can't possibly keep these of our own accord. So we need some kind of an intercessory thing to happen. And the intercessor here was Jesus. He paid the price, and he came, he took our place, and he fulfilled the law. And that's an important thing. He fulfilled it 100%. There's no more of that held to our account. So that's the thing. That's why the need for a savior, because it's pointed out these commandments and stuff are put in place to show us that just by our nature, our fallen nature, we cannot keep all of these different doctrines and commandments, and to even do so is a burden to mankind. And God never intended for any of this stuff to be a burden, so he sent his son in order to fulfill this law, so that we could be reunified with him. And that's something where people get hung up on a lot of this stuff, on the legalistic aspect of it. If you really truly accept him and want to follow him, you'll do your best to keep these commandments. And that's the bottom line, because you'll want to, because it'll be in your heart to. Basically, it all boils down to two things. First, love God, and love your neighbor as yourself. All the rest is commentary. And I believe it was the Jewish rabbi, I think his name was Hillel, that quote is attributed to him. But that is basically the gospel in a nutshell. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. The rest of it's all commentary. And if you do those things, everything else falls in line, and you don't have to worry about the legalistic dogma that's associated with all of this. But see, that's the problem. I know Baldini has said before, and I agree with him 100%, the biggest problem with Christianity is Christians. And that's the truth, because they just get so caught up in this mindset of, this judgmental mindset of these things, because, you do read the scriptures and understand, these are the laws that God laid down and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, none of us are perfect, and we're all going to violate those laws. And the most important thing at the end of the day is intention. Intent is everything. We say that all the time on all the different shows and stuff we do. Intent is everything. So, the intent, if the intent to do good is there, that's the important part, and everything else will fall in place. So, trying to keep up with the legalistic aspect of it, that's dogmatic thought, and that is the big downfall of any religious type of belief or religious type system, is dogma. So that's where we're at with that. But anyway, so Jesus warned us that these times would come, and he said, and then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. What do we see going on in society right now with the masks, guys? This is it. Everybody's offended by everybody else. And, everybody's hating on each other. Oh, you didn't wear the mask. You want to kill my grandma or something like that. You know what I mean? Or you're wearing a mask, or, you don't care about your rights. We need to stop all the silly infighting with this stuff. Have compassion for your fellow human being. We're all victims of the same machine here when it comes down to it. And that's the problem. So we got to really be mindful of how we present ourselves to people and how we interact with people. We don't want to be, putting more vitriol and hate into feeding the system, because that's what it runs on. It runs on fear. It runs on hatred. It runs on negative emotion, and that's adding more fuel to the fire. So I mean, I know it. When I see people walking around with the masks on, I think it's very sad that they're that conditioned to do this. But I see them as victims, not as somebody who's, you know, uh, spitting in the face of their freedoms and their human rights. Because I guarantee you, about 99% of the people wearing the masks, they think they're doing the right thing. They really, honestly, legitimately do, because they're so convinced by the quote unquote authority figures that this is the right, course of action to take, that they just blindly follow orders, and that's a sad place to be. And all we could do is drop little seeds here and there and hope that they, pick up these seeds and something eventually comes of it. But you can't really force your beliefs on anybody at the end of the day. That doesn't do anybody any bit of good. It's the same thing with religious faith or with things like this, like we're just talking about. But this stuff was predicted and talked about here in the Bible. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And I guarantee, folks, it's probably only going to get worse before it gets better. So let's continue on with the reading anyway, picking up in verse 11. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And that goes through verse 13. So here it is. That's what we're looking at. False prophets, uh, deceiving many people. There's, false prophets abound everywhere. So this is, what we see going on. And it says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Iniquity is abounding, folks, isn't it? Look at our political structure right now. Look at all the corruption, top to bottom, through the whole political spectrum. Talk about draining the swamp, but never actually draining the swamp, because, the person supposedly draining the swamp's a swamp rat themselves. This is what we're talking about. I mean, and this is why the love of many waxes cold. They just grow so bitter about all of this stuff, especially when you look at the political control system that's in place with it all. That's what it's all about. It's more division. It's divisive. That's what it's there for, to divide. That's its whole purpose. It's to divide. And this is what the result is. Because iniquity abounds, the love of many waxes cold. So that's the ultimate antidote to everything here, folks, is love. Love overcomes all. It overcomes fear. Fear would be the opposite of love, in my view. And fear is what is abounding, because people are so afraid of loss, of losing things, of losing, their financial freedom, of losing their health, of losing their country, their livelihood, their freedom, their lives in many cases. That's what this ultimately boils down to. It's fear. And our media system is designed basically to bring about fear. That's what it does. It's a control mechanism. They use this fear as a control mechanism. And then you have people walking around in public staying 6 feet apart, wearing a mask, because they're so fearful of other human beings for one of two reasons. Because, number one, they're either afraid that they'll catch this deadly virus and die, so they fear for their lives. Or number two, they fear for their freedom. And that's the other end of the spectrum, the ones that don't want to wear the mask. Why don't they want to wear the mask? Well, because they're fearing that this is an encroachment upon their freedoms and their human rights. And in my view, yeah, that's a correct assessment. But at the same time, this is also invoking a spirit of fear. And we can't have that. So it's a fine line we have to walk. So, we don't want to walk in a spirit of fear, because that's not from God. God informs us very succinctly that He has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And this is not something that's born of a sound mind. This is born of fear. This fear of a supposed illness so bad that you're walking around with a mask on, afraid to go anywhere near other human beings. That's terrible. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, those of us that look at it and see that this is all promulgated by fear, then we have a different fear, a fear that somebody's attempting to take our God given rights from us. So that's a form of fear in and of itself. So it's a fine line that we skate on. And a lot of times our reactions to this stuff and how we actually act towards the people that think they're doing good by wearing the mask, or the ones that think they're doing good by not wearing the mask, depending on what side of the aisle you're on with that, how we react to that is, I think, what's going to make the difference. We can't react out of fear. And we also can't react out of, hatred or out of a feeling of superiority or anything like that, because that's all nonsense and that's all born of the spirit of fear. All of that stuff. So we need to just remember we're all victims of this machine in this regard. So it's a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation. When you look at it that way, it's a catch-22, as they call it. And it's designed this way on purpose. That's the thing. This whole thing, it's all been promulgated on purpose, the way it's come about. And I know a lot of people believe it's all coincidence or whatever. I don't have enough faith to be a coincidence theorist. Sorry, folks. That's not me. I just see too many connections all over the place with all of this stuff. And you see, it's all very carefully planned and designed. And it's designed in a way where it traps you. It's a trap. No matter which reaction you take to it or which side you go to. When there's two sides to any argument, guaranteed that's a control system, folks. That's the classic Hegelian dialectic. Two sides of the argument, they control both sides. The people running it, they control both sides. Okay? So remember that. It's a trap. It's a control system. And so we have to be really careful how we approach these different subjects. And it's very tricky because this is the age of deception and deceit is everywhere. And iniquity abounds, as the Bible says here. So, I mean, this is what we're looking at. But also, I want everybody to have hope, though, as well, because look at how verse 13, what that says here. It says, "But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved." So there will be an end to this, for all these things come to an end. See, that's the thing. All created things see their end. And this whole pandemic situation is a created thing, and it'll see its end. And it might be a long time. It might be a short time. I don't know. It all depends. I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. But I do know the words of Jesus are trustworthy, and they've always been accurate. I've never seen anything that Jesus has ever said not be accurate. So, this is a red letter verse here we're reading. All of this stuff, most of it's in the red letters. This is actually attributed to Christ himself saying it. So, whatever stock you put into that, I see it as an important thing. If Jesus said it, then, it's important. Pay attention. And that's my view. So whatever side of the aisle you fall on that whole situation as well, whatever your belief system, it's important, because regardless of what you believe about the Bible or about Jesus Christ himself, this stuff's important, and it was written the way it was written for a reason, and the information is there, and it's important information. So regardless of what you think about the source of the information, pay attention. It's important. So, we'll continue on now. So we're going to continue at verse 14. "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth this, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days." And this is talking about, breastfeeding and that kind of thing. When it says that in this sense, it's, nursing the children, whoever's pregnant or is nursing children in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And we'll just pause right there for a minute, because there's a couple important ideas we need to look at there now. So it says first, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all the nations, and then shall the end come. So everybody is going to hear about this. Okay, so that's what it is. People are going to understand. They're going to be given the option, the choice. Here's the Christian gospel. This is what it says. Here's the basic tenets of it. Do you accept it or reject it? That's the thing. So when this is presented to everybody in the world, like to all cultures in the world, I don't know if that necessarily refers to every single individual being in the world, or if it just means to every culture, that kind of thing throughout all the world. Then shall the end come after that, after this stuff is known and these scriptures have come out and been seen by the vast majority of the world. So it says, then shall the end come. So the next verse, this is where I think it gets interesting, and there's a lot of different interpretation that could be, attributed to a lot of these different ideas. And I tend to, in my research and from what I've seen, I attribute this next verse to the transhumanist singularity. In my view, I think it all ties together, because it says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. And then it says, whoso readeth, let him understand. So this is important. And, Jesus is telling us here, this bit of information, you have to dig a little to understand what it means, that it's open for a different interpretation. It's not in a literal sense. So when you're looking at this abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, well, what is that? And that's the thing. And it says, stand in the holy place. In my view, and this is kind of the angle I look at it from, I see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. This would be the spirit of transhumanism entering into the human being. Because know ye not that ye are the temple of God? And that's another verse in the Bible here. It says, ye are the temple of God. So if you are the temple of God, you are the holy place. So if the transhumanists get their way, they plan to merge our consciousness with the consciousness of an artificial intelligence. And an artificial intelligence, in my view, this is an unnatural thing that doesn't belong in our reality. So this would be an abomination of desolation of the human body, the human soul, the human spirit. So this transhumanist singularity, this merging of man with the machine, the artificial intelligence, to create this next step in evolution, allegedly, for the human being to H plus or human 2.0. This, in my view, is the abomination of desolation, standing in the holy place, because the holy place has been desolated by this, and now the artificial intelligence is in control. So that's the way I see it. So that's why I tend to equate this to, the transhumanist singularity or the transhumanist philosophy. And that's just my interpretation, and I could be totally wrong, and I hope I'm totally wrong. But in my view, I think this is the biggest thing coming down the pike that we're seeing coming into place right now. It's all falling into place. The dominoes are all falling where they're supposed to in order for that to happen. So then in the next verse it says, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Now this is symbolic once again. Fleeing into the mountains. Okay? Them which be in Judea. Judea would be an allusion, Allusion, to being the physical world that we live in. Okay? The material world. Flee into the mountains. The mountains are symbolic of the spiritual. So it's warning people, get your spirit right with God. When you see this, get your spirit right with God. That's what that's telling you. Get to that spiritual place. Okay? Forget the material. Start thinking more spiritually minded. That's what that is in my viewpoint. That's what that verse means. And it says, goes on to say, let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. So this is telling me once this thing happens, it's going to be a very short time. There's no turning back. That's what this is telling you. There's no turning back. So if you're fleeing, to a more spiritual type of mindset, you don't go back to the material. Don't look back. That's an allusion back once again to the whole story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot's wife turns around and looks back at the material world where they lived, all of this that they had so much time and energy and stuff vested in, and she didn't want to leave it because she was so caught up in the hyper materialist world that she lived in there, the hyper materialist view, that she looked back and she was turned into a pillar of salt. So this is kind of the same basic concept. There's no turning back. Like once it's time, once this happens, there's no turning back. You can't have it both ways. You can't sit on both sides of the fence. You can't live luxuriously in the material reality and still be able to pursue these spiritual things once this transhumanist control grid snaps into place. There's no in between. It's either you're going to be part of the system or you're not. And those times are coming. Right now, we're at a critical juncture in our history where we could still potentially change this. Okay? And that's why it's important that we understand a lot of these spiritual ideas and scriptural ideas, as well as the actual, strategic planning that goes along with a lot of these things. That's why I spend so much time analyzing their documents and stuff like that, and looking at the things they put out there, these different predictive programming models, or these different playbooks that they use to plan stuff, because it's important to understand what it is that they're going to do and how they do it. And if you do that, you could put a stop to it. If enough of us really know like how they're doing it and what they're doing, we could say, we see what you're doing here. We're putting a stop to it, and we can turn this around. But I think the whole key is to get in a more spiritually minded place, and that's the important takeaway from all of this: is get in your spiritually minded place. Get yourself right with God, okay? Because we're coming upon some tough times, and regardless of how it turns out, you're not going to make it without God's help, folks. Plain and simple. That's the bottom line. Okay? You're not going to make it without God's help. We need God. God doesn't need us. We need God. And that's the thing. We don't have the strength in our own power to make it through this stuff, or in our own say limited viewpoints and our limited intellect. We can't have the best of discernment all the time. That's why we need the Holy Spirit to guide us. This is why we need God to guide us. This is why we need the discernment. This is why we need the personal relationship. This is not about religion. It's never been about religion, okay? It's about a personal relationship with God, knowing who He is and knowing Him, and He'll guide you in the way you need to go. He'll give you this discernment. He'll allow you to read between the lines when you need to. And this is important. Get your heart right with God. Get your soul right with God, because we're in unprecedented times right now. Anything could happen. Are things going to play out, in the literal sense that they do in the biblical prophecies and stuff here? I don't know. I can't say that for sure. Will it be more of a symbolic type of a fulfillment of these things? Possibly. Is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Probably, possibly. But bottom line is here, folks, we're sitting at a crossroads right now where we need to make a decision as to what we're going to do in a spiritual sense here. So we need to choose. Are we going to vest ourselves heavily in this hyper-materialist reality, or are we looking for loftier, more spiritual ideas? Do we think human beings are more than just a biochemical machine that experience is the world through the electrical impulses of our brain. Are we nothing more than a machine, or are we something more? I believe we're something more, and I believe that the spiritual aspect of things cannot be fully quantified, and that's why the science, quote unquote science, the scientism paradigm. That's why they put so much emphasis in trying to defame Christianity and all of that and anything religious or spiritual, because they don't know how to measure or quantify anything spiritual. They can't. Science wasn't designed for that. Scientific method is only one means of analyzing data. Okay? That's the problem. That scientific method, as your sole source of data analysis, violates scientific method when it comes down to it, because there's many different methods of obtaining data. Okay? And they can't fully quantify or understand the spiritual aspect of things, so they discard it and they try to work it into a little hyper materialist view. They turn everything into a particle. Okay? This is the cult of atomism. That's what scientism is. It's the cult of atomism. We're going to try to equate everything down to a particle, and it's a smaller and smaller particle till you get to something that they call the quote unquote the God particle. Okay? They're trying to equate God to a particle. God is more than a particle, folks. You cannot describe God as a particle, yet they will try. And that's the hyper-materialist view. And that's what this whole transhumanist philosophy is built upon, the hyper-materialist view. So, this is where we're at. We're at a crossroads right now. Are we going to, accept our spiritual destiny as a child of God? Or are we going to fall further and further into this hyper-materialist viewpoint and try to become our own gods? It's kind of a very dangerous crossroads to be at, because a lot of people really buy into this hyper-materialist viewpoint. A lot of really smart, educated people, and that's the thing. People have been so indoctrinated into this system that they forget all things spiritual and view it as being, silliness or nonsense because they can't quantify it through scientific method. You can't quantify a miracle. I've experienced miracles, folks. I don't know about you. I've experienced it. I've seen firsthand. I've seen God do wondrous things firsthand in my life, folks. I've seen it. I know. I don't just believe. I know who God is, and I know what He's capable of. And you can't scientifically quantify that, and that drives these people nuts. So they try to write it off. Okay? And this is where we're at. We're at the crossroads, this junction. Are we going to choose the hyper-materialist future, the transhumanist future, where we're all tied into a system of debt and slavery tied to a computer for the rest of our lives, and possibly through all of eternity, if you could, do what they say and upload your consciousness to a machine? Is that what you want? That to me sounds like my own personal hell, honestly. Or are we going to choose the loftier spiritual path and be, what God intended us to be? And that's where we're at right now. And that's why it's important that we look at this stuff and we understand the things that are being said in these scriptures. Because whether you, view these scriptures as being divinely inspired, or whether you just think it's mythology, or whatever your belief is on it, this stuff is written down and recorded for a reason, and it's heavily encoded, and there's layers and layers and layers of meaning in here, and it's that way for a purpose and for a reason. And it didn't come about by accident, okay? And it wasn't just somebody wrote down something one day and, it sounds good, so people interpret it all different ways and blah, blah, blah. And everything they try to write this off as. There's more to it than that. There's something really to this. And it has been an accurate predictor of the future for as long as we could look back. So, it's really tying into archetypal ideas and, just different aspects of human consciousness that we can't fully quantify using scientific method. And that's what's recorded here. So it's important that we look at this so we could kind of get a feeling for things to come and how we can react and things we can do, because the entirety of human experience has been expressed here in the Holy Bible. And there's other religious texts and stuff too that have a lot of profound ideas in them. And we should read all of this stuff, folks. Like I'm not against looking at the Quran or looking at the Torah or anything, Buddhist writings, all of it. We should look at all of it and consider all of it, because all this stuff that's been written down and passed down um, through the centuries and through the millennia, it's stood the test of time for a reason, and there's value to be garnered from all of it. Okay, whether you fundamentally agree with some of the philosophies or not, it's important that we educate ourselves with this stuff, because at the end of the day, we're all seeking the same thing. We all want to know, who's God? Why are we here? What happens to us after we die? What's our purpose here? That kind of thing. All human beings, through the entirety of the existence of human beings, have wondered these things and pondered upon these things. This is the great question that people have had. I mean, these are the questions of the ages. So, like these are important ideas to try and fathom. So, it's important that we look at this stuff and try to garner an understanding of it. But we could see, just in the season we're in now, the way the world is, that there's a lot of things that are written in the Scripture here that are coming to fruition. So we can kind of get a feel for things to come and understand what we do now will affect the outcome of this. So if we don't heed the warning that's written here in the pages, then we're doomed to fulfill the bad part of it. And we don't necessarily want to wind up going down that road, do we? But that's the problem. Will the bulk of humanity heed the warning and turn this around, or not? The power is in our hands. So we have to choose. But anyway, let's get back to it here. So let's see. So we left off at verse 19. So let's move on. Verse 20 here. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. And once again, this harkens back to the idea, take heed that no man deceive you. Because people will come and they'll say, oh, this is Jesus, or this is what the Scripture meant Jesus is supposed to be. This transhumanist singularity here, this is what the Bible was talking about in the fulfillment of Christ. This is the office of Christ. Or any of these different New Age type beliefs that come and are telling you this. Believe it not. Okay? It's telling you right here. This is in bold red letters. Believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. There's so many people deceived by this whole mask situation, folks, by this whole pandemic situation right now. We're living in the age of deception, no doubt. Is this the Great Deception? Is this part of this Great Deception spoken of here? Is this part of the deceit? Very possible. It's got a lot of people convinced. A lot of, very sober-minded people, highly educated, really smart people. They're buying it. They're buying what these people are selling. And, this, I think, could possibly be part of what's being talked about here. So, back to the reading here. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers. Pay attention to that. Believe it not. And we're going to just hover right on that verse for a minute. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers. Believe it not. Okay, the secret chambers, folks. The Masonic temple that has secret chambers, doesn't it? They tell you God is here in the secret chambers, in the secret place. God is in the desert. What's that alluding to? That's alluding to ancient Egypt, folks. That's the whole um, Egyptian paradigm coming into play there. This is relating back to the mystery school teachings. Okay? This is what they're trying to tell you. This is everything that's associated with these mystery school type teachings that the secret societies hold up. Uh, they're telling you this is Christ. This is what this means. Okay? So they're telling you, this is what they're talking about here. It's all allegorical and this and that. And yeah, in a certain sense, a lot of these stories and stuff in the Bible, they may or may not be allegorical. Okay, they're most certainly allegory. Are they based on real events? Possibly. Is it a mythological story? Possibly. I can't possibly know the answers, folks, to these things. Okay, but there's important spiritual ideas that underscore all of this, and that's the important part. Okay, so you need to understand that's the important part. And they're telling you here, Jesus is saying here, that if they're telling you, behold, he's in the secret chambers, or behold, this is what this is what the Bible's talking about. This is the God that the Bible's talking about. Look at all of our doctrines we have that we've passed down in secret from one to another through the ages. This is what God really is. This is what this is talking about. This whole thing's a put up. That's what they're trying to tell you. They're telling you the Bible's a put up. That's what the secret societies tell you. It's a collection of stories. Okay, they're telling you it's not the inspired word of God. They're telling you that it's all mythology based. And some of what they're telling you has true aspects to it, but they're not giving you the whole story. They're leading you astray, because what has happened is through the years, a lot of these secret societies and these occult mystery schools have twisted a lot of these ideas that were held up in the old natural sciences and the old alchemical sciences and the old ways of looking at things, and they've perverted them and twisted them to utilize them to their own advantage and benefit for the very few, the select few at the top of the power structure that really honestly believe in their hearts that they have the divine right to rule everybody else, that they're better than everybody. And that's who's promulgated this type of idea. So that's why you see things like within the recent decades, things like that Zeitgeist movie, this kind of stuff coming out, this information, which, by the way, there's been a lot of different repudiations of that. And not to take away from, the ideas inherent in astrotheology, but that spin that they put on the astrotheology, that was only born out of this theosophical movement, folks, the theosophists. You're talking, this comes out of the group that was promulgated by Madame Blavatsky and the Aleister Crowleys of the world, this kind of thing, theosophy. The theosophists kind of birthed this zeitgeist type idea that's presented in that Zeitgeist movie, how they twisted the ideas of astrotheology to try to convince people that this is not truth, okay? That all religion is based upon just study of the stars. You can see once again the hyper-materialist view being promulgated there. That's what this came out of. That's what that was designed to do. It's trying to convince people, no, all that spiritual stuff you're talking about there in the Bible and all, that's all nonsense. It's all just the way they looked at the stars and they told stories about the stars, and that's what that's all based on. That's what they're trying to convince people of. That was the whole purpose of putting out that idea in that Zeitgeist movie, and that's why, this whole idea of astrotheology has been taken up by many of these different type of New Age groups and stuff like that, and pushed and promulgated, and how it's been twisted and manipulated to represent something it really doesn't. Okay, you can take away some important things from astrotheology, and I'm not against looking at all of that information. It's important we understand all of it. But see, when you think back, what was the actual intention behind it? Once again, we get back to intent is everything. What was the intent of popularizing the idea of astrotheology? like in the truth movement and in the New Age movement and stuff like that. Well, you could see it was to push us towards this hyper materialist viewpoint again. And it's the same thing with the whole ufology movement, too. This is all tied up in it. It's all a push towards hyper materialism. See? Do you understand the game yet, folks? It's a twisting of this. They're trying to convince you, oh, these backwards ancient peoples, they don't know what they're talking about. This is all stuff that's explainable here in the material world. Uh, they're presenting you this hyper materialist view to things, and it's a perversion of what we knew in the old times about the natural sciences and about the more spiritual ideas and the alchemical ideas behind things. Okay? It's not taking any of that into account. It's trying to push people's mentalities towards this hyper materialist viewpoint. So that's what all of that has been about. So this is what it's talking about when it says false prophets, false Christs, things of that nature. In he's in this. Behold, he's in the secret place. This this is what this is pointing out. It's pointing out the fallacy of this. Jesus has even said in the Bible, "In secret have I told you nothing." Okay, that's kind of a dressing down of the whole concept of these secret societies. He says, "In secret have I told you nothing." That's very profound when you think about it, because this whole structure of the power structure, the control centers of this world, using these secret societies to promulgate these different ideas and secrecy as a weapon against the masses, a tool. That's what this is pointing out. Okay, secrecy is repugnant. JFK said that. Secrecy is repugnant. And it's one of the most heavily utilized mind control weapons that there is. Secrecy. They hold the idea of that they're keeping secrets over your head to maintain control of you. That's another part of this game that's being played. And Jesus came out and said, "In secret have I told you nothing." So that's kind of something we need to keep in mind when we see these secret groups or whatever that have this hidden knowledge. And I understand both sides of the argument with that. The don't cast your pearls before swine, that kind of idea. But at the same token, you shouldn't keep the secrets of these things to yourself either, when these are things that can benefit all of humanity. If you just extend them just this little bit of courtesy to try to show them little things in little steps and little increments, rather than just block them out and you keep it in your little inside club there, in your secret place, in within the secret societies, and you have to be initiated and go through this ritual and be found worthy, and then only then could we maybe tell you a little bit of something in an allegorical sense and that kind of thing, and advance through the ranks. The whole initiatory system, it flies in the face of what human decency would would think. Don't you think so? I mean, if you knew something that could help somebody and they were unaware of this thing, and you could try to explain it to them or tell them or steer them in the right direction, wouldn't you do so, even though they weren't necessarily like in your big club or whatever? Well, that's the thing. A lot of these people, rather than using this knowledge and these ideas to help other people, they keep them to themselves so that they can use it as a means of control over the other people. And that's wrong, in my view. And I think that's kind of what's been exposed here with that idea. If they say, "Behold, he's in the secret place," that's not where he's at, folks. He doesn't hide himself from any man. Okay? God is there. He's ever present. All you got to do is open your eyes and look around at the perfect order of how nature operates. You can see the influence of God in that, inherent in that. So open your eyes and see. You don't have to go look for him in a secret place. Okay? He's ever present. He's omnipresent. He's everywhere. He's there, and all you got to do is ask him. All you got to do is ask him if you got a question. You want to know who he is. Show yourself to me, Lord, please. That's all you have to ask. It doesn't take any more than that. There's no big secret to getting in, relationship with God. And that's what these secret societies would have you believe, that, Oh, you have this secret knowledge. You need this gnosis in order to get, back into the good graces of God. And it's through works and it's through all these different ideas. That's not how it is. Okay, all you got to do is ask, pretty much. And there's not one particular arbiter of spiritual things in this world like that. That will take you to that point. And it's certainly not in the secret societies. So, I can guarantee you that it's not in the secret place as it says here. So anyway, I've been rambling a little bit here. So let's get on with it. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. This one's important, folks. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. So he's saying, when you see in the springtime that the fig tree has its leaves are starting to bud, summer's coming. Well, it's the same thing when we see all these signs he spoke about, the pestilences, the wars, rumors of wars, all of this stuff. The iniquity in everywhere, and people's hearts waxing cold. When we see all of this stuff, know that it's near, that it's the springtime and the summer's coming, that this stuff is coming very soon. It's even at the doors. So let's continue on. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of the day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, this is telling us some important things. It's telling us, be mindful, okay? The time's drawing short. We're seeing all these signs being fulfilled. We should be watchful right now. We should be watching and waiting. Something big's going to happen here, folks. And we could all have a part in what that is, okay? We could turn this whole situation around by being watchful. And we could reap the reward of the good servant there. whereas we could be given our portion in these things. Okay, or we could just stand idly by and say, they've been talking about the return of the Lord for 2,000 years. He's never come yet. He's not coming at all. And take that mindset and then fall further and further and further into debauchery and, all of the, really abhorrent behaviors and stuff that have been accepted and promoted within our society now. All the moral degradation that's gone on. We could partake in that and become just very vested in this hyper materialist viewpoint. That's kind of what we've been given. That's the crossroads we're at right now. Are we going to fall into the hyper materialist viewpoint and go this way and ultimately, suffer the wrath because of it? Or are we going to understand that we have a spiritual existence that goes way beyond this place and, accept the things of God and look at the things in a more spiritual sense and be able to move on from here, be able to do better with the lot we've been given here in life. Okay? So that's the important thing we need to do. And we need to look at this all on an individual level as well. We all need to be doing the right things. I live my life by one basic philosophy. And it's this. It's simply this. If you know something's the right thing to do, just do it. Okay? If you know in your heart something's the right thing to do, whether you want to do it or not, just do it. You can't go wrong. And that's the bottom line. I mean, it may not always be convenient for you to do the right thing, but if you know it's the right thing, do it. At the end of the day, you have a clean conscience and, a clean heart with your Creator, with the Maker. So that's basically what it all boils down to. Are we going to get ourselves right with God? Are we going to live a moral, upright, just life and do right by other people? Are we going to love our Creator, love God, and love our neighbor as ourselves? Are we going to do this? If we do this, we can't go wrong. Then there's nothing to fear. Love overcomes all fear. Love triumphs over all. And that's the bottom line. So that's basically the crux of this whole situation. Love one another. Love your God. Watch out for each other. Help a brother out. You know what I'm saying? We need to stop being so judgmental of each other and being so competitive with one another with things and everything of that nature. Everybody's going through their own private situations, their own struggles that we have no idea of. So we just need to be mindful of that. Be a caring, loving human being. And sometimes it's hard to love the unlovely, but we really need to make that attempt, because if we do, I guarantee you, we could have better outcomes for our future. If we look around at the natural world and show a little bit more of care and concern for that, then same thing. It's the same thing. We could have better outcomes. But if we just view everything as being, the hyper materialist view of things, where the material world is all there is, and anything religious or spiritual is nonsense, and that kind of viewpoint that modern scientism would have you believe. And scientism is the new religion of the time, folks, when it comes down to it. Science. You could see that. I mean, just look on any Facebook post or anything anywhere where people are arguing the science is settled, or you're a science denier if you don't believe this. That's the whole thing. It's a belief system. Okay, it's the new religion, and that's the religion of the hyper materialist viewpoint. And that's what they're trying to push and promote, which actually flies in the face of all the old natural sciences and alchemical sciences and the things that ancient man knew. There is a spiritual component to this. There is more to this world and this universe than just this material, physical place where we live. There's a lot more to it, and it's not quantifiable or measurable through scientific method. And trying to squeeze this subjective thing into an objective box doesn't work, even though they will try their very best to make it work. They'll actually, try to convince you to believe absurdities. with this whole idea and this whole concept of scientism. And they've done a great job, haven't they, of making you believe absurdities. But Voltaire warned, he who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. So that's the fine line that we're skating on here with this. So with that being said, we've read through, the book of Matthew, chapter 24, the whole thing, and we could see what the Lord has said about these things, about the times we're in, and about how we should act in these times. And He says, get your mind in a higher spiritual state. Get yourself in a more spiritual state. Okay, try to ignore much of the materialist viewpoint of things. There's more to this world than the hyper materialist view. And this is what the Lord would say. Get yourself right with God. Get your spirit right with God. Be more mindful of spiritual things instead of worldly things. And that's where most of the world is at right now. We're all caught up in the material, worldly things. Things like, what causes illness or dis-ease? What causes disease? Oh, it's this little virus. There's your cult of atomism again. It's this tiny particle you can't see causes this, causes infirmity. Okay? There's nothing else to it. It's just this material thing, this little material thing. This is the whole cause. And this is what they would have you believe, okay? Now, the whole quote unquote science behind the idea of contagion has never really truly been settled. But, according to these quote unquote experts in their white lab coats and stuff who are running this whole show, this whole deception, as it were, because believe me, it's a deception. Whether you believe there's an actual illness or not that's going around, that's immaterial. The whole thing that they've based everything else upon, their reaction to it, is all a deception. That's inarguable in my view. Their reaction to it's a deception. But this is what they would have you believe. They're once again trying to steer your mind into the hyper materialist viewpoint. They're trying to trap you in this materialist viewpoint. And that leads to the philosophy of transhumanism when it comes down to it. Because if you believe all there is this material world that we exist in, and where our consciousness is nothing more than a byproduct of the electrical impulses of our brain, then the only way for you to achieve, quote unquote, illumination or immortality or transcendence, whatever term you want to use, would be to merge your consciousness with the machine and upload your consciousness into a computer so that you could live forever and have immortality and be able to do godlike things. That's what you would believe if you were totally convinced that this is all there is the material world. And that's kind of the viewpoint they're trying to push on people, folks. And I'm here to tell you, it's a deception. I'm just a messenger, okay? It's a deception. Don't fall for it, okay? Heed the words of our Lord, whether you believe He's your Lord or not. I know He's my Lord. So this stuff is important, okay? Whether you necessarily agree with the viewpoint of Christianity that's been promulgated, by the mainstream churches and stuff like that, or not, or whether you think of it in terms of a more mythological type thing, don't disregard the information, folks. Okay, it's important, regardless of what you believe about the source of the information. The information itself is here. It's very layered with meaning. It's highly encoded. It's been thoroughly accurate as a predictor of our history. It's been thoroughly accurate as in encompassing the entirety of human experience. Don't disregard that. It's important. Okay? So, at the end of the day, this is what I have to say. I say, get your soul right with God. Get your mind right with God. Get your heart right with God. Be decent to your fellow human being. Okay? Treat somebody how you want to be treated. That's it. That's the whole of the law right there. Just do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Plain and simple. Love God. Treat your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. The rest all falls in place beyond that. And that's the bottom line with it all. So also keep your eyes open. Watch the things going on around you. No, the season is very near. The time is drawing near. We're approaching very rapidly the end of the age here, folks. I mean, this is just like it says in that parable of the fig tree. Okay, when you see the leaves starting to bud, you know that summer is very near, and it's almost at the doors. It's the same thing going on when we see all these things happening in the world. The time is here. Okay, it's just about here. We still have time to react, but it's important that you open your eyes, pay attention to what's going on, get your heart right, get yourself right. And that's the best we could do at this point. Try and help other people to understand these things. Try to point out the you know inaccuracies in the hyper materialist viewpoint that's being pushed. Okay, try to lead people to something more. And we could just do this by planting seeds. Don't be overbearing, because that gets you nowhere. All right, like fervently pushing your religious viewpoints or something on somebody, all that does is push people further away from it. So, all you can do is drop these little seeds, maybe talk about these things, and when people are actually ready to start really questioning things and they have questions, then they'll come to you and they'll start asking you what you think about this or that. I've seen it in my own life. So that's what I could tell you, folks. So this has been a good reading of the book of Matthew, chapter 24, the Sermon on the Mount. And I think this is important stuff, important advice to heed here. Keep an eye on where things are going, folks. And, if enough of us start stepping up and trying to get this information out there and inform people what's going on and try to do something to correct the iniquities that we see all over the place, then we could have a very different future than that which the control system is trying to impose on us. So we have hope, and there's a lot of people that are waking up. A lot of people are seeing through the illusion and the deceit and the deception of it all, and are really willing to try to do something to get out of this whole paradigm. So it's hopeful. I see a lot of hope here, folks. There's a lot more people that are waking up to these ideas. So it's important that we keep our eyes open, watch, be mindful, because if you know when the thief is coming, you would be awake on that watch to stop the thief from coming into your house. So that's a perfect allegory or analogy for that too. So we have to keep our eyes open, know the times and the seasons that we're in, and react accordingly, and treat people accordingly, and pursue the spiritual aspect of things. I think that's the bottom line here. Start looking at things through the spiritual lens more than the material lens. We've been programmed for the past 100 years at least, easily, into this hyper materialist viewpoint and this hyper materialist kind of a paradigm. So we need to start breaking that and get back to more spiritual ideas. And if we do, our society will be better for it. Anyway, folks, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. This has been great. I always enjoy doing these Sola Scriptura episodes. And, next time, the great Baldini and myself will get together and do this again. And I think he'll probably be doing a point 0.5 episode again next Sunday. So always looking forward to that. He's got a lot of wisdom. Love him as a brother. And glad to give him this time tonight to actually recuperate from his travels. He's been a busy fellow. So, a lot of responsibility when you're the inherent genius bald guy. So he's got a lot on his plate, man. So anyway, love you, brother. Thanks, guys. Love you all. Have a good night. Like and subscribe, please.